Um, Welcome to the City Council regular meeting of July 8th, 2025. Hope everyone had a happy 4th of July weekend. We do have Councilman Scaletti is joining us by Zoom, so he'll be with us this evening. And with that, I want to ask everyone to please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Michael McPhee.
If it is your custom to bow, please join us in prayer. Gracious Father, we come before you today seeking your presence and guidance as we gather for this meeting. Unite our hearts and minds in a common purpose. Grant us clarity of thought, the spirit of cooperation, and the wisdom to make decisions that will benefit our area. May our discussions be productive and our actions be guided by your will. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is public comment. This is on any item that's on the agenda this evening. Let's see, I've got Anthony Pope. It's non-agenda? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, you're correct, okay. Mike Tomey?
Should have known that. My name's Mike Tomey. I'm at 1103 Craven Street. I am also the chair of the Planning Commission, and I wanted to speak this evening about Section 7 comments that were received late on Friday. And I wanted to do this just so that we could get it out on the table real quick. I'm not sure what y'all decide to do with Section 7 and Section 9, but regardless of that, I wanted to at least respond to you relative to the comments I got. For those who don't know, my board consists of 3 senior attorneys, one of which is a senior land attorney, a senior development engineer, 2 architects, and I have over 50 years of major project experience and 50 years on planning commissions in major metropolitan areas. And believe me, keeping them constrained on a day-to-day basis in meetings is an achievement only for a senior person. Also city staff and planners. This dedicated senior staff has literally spent hundreds of hours updating this code. There are hundreds of pages documenting all of the public meetings and discussions, including members of the public, other city commissioners, as well as regional organizations such as the Coastal Conservation Commission. Myself, my chair, co-chair, city staff and planners have reviewed the comments provided to us last Friday with the following conclusions. Number 1, the document that was used was an earlier version of the final version passed to the city council from the planning commission, so it was not the version that was the final version. Majority of the comments are of a clerical nature, with many already taken care of in our final version. There are some valid comments to be considered and will be brought back to the commission for review if, in fact, you desire us to do that. As an example, an appeals process was mentioned. However, a new section was written that they did not have relative to the appeals process and was included in the final version release to the city council. The planning commission has the following recommendations. We are here for and dedicated to our community. I would suggest that we hold a workshop with representatives from the Chamber of Commerce to review the discussion items presented to us last Friday. We believe that this could be done within a fairly short period of time, allowing the second reading to go to City Council in August. Our commission feels that it is extremely important to finish our code reviews as soon as possible. It's hard to deal with being in between codes for every meeting that we have. All of our workshops and meetings are publicly noticed, and we would also strongly suggest and encourage representatives from the regional chamber to attend those meetings and interact with the dialogue concerning the writing of our codes. And so we really do invite them to participate with us, as do many of the other public and other organizations. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Tomey. Okay, next, we don't have anyone else that signed up for the, for agenda items, so we'll move on to the next item. Meeting agenda approval. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like one item pulled. Number L. Okay, I'd like to have one item pulled, from the consent agenda. Item L, I would like to have that pulled for further discussion.
Okay. All right. Do we have any discussion? You want to go ahead and go with that? Do we need a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion that we pull it.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, we have a second now, discussion.
Okay, as far as this item, I would like it to go to staff for them to work with them. Apparently, the application was done before the shutdown of the walkway in the park, the promenade of the park, which would really affect where they were wanting to put it at. I'm still very much in favor of it. I just feel like we need to work to accommodate them to find a better place, and I think staff can do so.
Point of privilege, Mr. Mayor. An item that's pulled from the consent agenda needs to be moved to the rear of new business items.
Okay,
Okay, sorry.
okay, we don't need to vote on that, I guess. We just go ahead and move it to the end of that. Okay, back to the question. Do the rest of the consent agenda be approved? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Excuse me, meet agenda approval. Next is presentations, city manager employee recognition of police officer Chris Cushman.
Come on down. Chief, I would be delighted if you would join us as well, please. I seem to be doing far too much of this from my own comfort level. Bidding adieu and thanking employees who have been here a long, long time. And Chris Cushman is one of those. He is someone that we will sorely miss in the police department and on the city staff. I'm not going to say a whole lot about him because they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So we have a moving picture, a video honoring Sergeant Cushman that must be worth about 1,000,000 words. So without further ado, how do we get to that video, Tracy? Thank you.
Yeah.
Although many of us are here tonight, as you can see around the room, some of us had to I proudly present you your retirement credentials. Always in our hearts and minds. Would you like to say something, sir?
Oh, I would. Y'all start the 5-minute timer now?
Take all the time you want.
All the time. Well, the best of times and the worst of times. So how do I thank everybody that's thanked me? I don't know. It's hard. So I figure I'm gonna write. I'll write to them. Write them a note, a personalized note, and Lolita has volunteered to help proofread it for me. This is a special department. I'm going to ask the council, General and Mr. Mayor, Mike, to keep supporting the department because this is a special department in a special place. 34 years ago, today, Charlotte and I got married, and I proposed to her in the waterfront park in a section we can't go to tonight.
Yeah.
I know they're going to fix it. I know they're going to fix it up just right because it's a special place, and this is a special place. The police department is special because of the individuals that we have that go above and beyond for each other in the community. The community is special because, like my friend Mr. Trask back here, who for years and years supported this department, worked with us. He and some others in this community, when you asked them for something, it wasn't a matter of if they're going to do it, it's how can we do it and what else can they do? Keeping the kids safe on Friday and Saturday nights at the theater for all those years. Then when everybody said, when the theater, finally closed and everyone said, there's nothing for the kids to do. There's nothing for the kids to do. What are the kids going to do? I said, it's not up to Mr. Trask to find something for your kids to do. It's really not on him, but I get what they're saying. Again, thank you to everyone here, everyone that's done it. The most thanks to Charlotte for putting up with me all these years because I would not be here without her. All right. So thank y'all, Mayor, Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
In no way does a plaque come close to being the proper recognition for someone who has given so much for so long for such a great population of special people. But nonetheless, we would be remiss if we did not give him a plaque and recognize him on the way out. So this plaque says, presented to Christopher C. Cushman, an appreciation for 33 years of dedicated service and devotion To the city of Beaufort and the community, congratulations on your retirement, January 20th, 1992 to July 8th, 2025. Congratulations.
Okay, next on the agenda are proclamations. We have a resolution honoring the 10th anniversary of the Pan-African Family Empowerment and Land Preservation Network's Help Save Gullah Geechee Land campaign.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion and second. Would you please read?
Do we have a
proclamation? Do we
presenter?
have a representative?
I don't think she's here.
Okay, we'll just
So we'll just
move that
vote
on.
on it. You want to go ahead and vote on it?
Yeah, let's, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next is a recognition of Paul Trask for his service on the Planning Commission. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Paul?
Whereas Paul Trask served on the Planning Commission from January 2024 until July of 2025. And whereas Mr. Trask devoted his efforts and energy and service on this important board, and the significant contributions Paul Trask made as a member of the Planning Commission has helped to support sustainable development practices and protect and enhance the design, character, and economic value of the city as a whole, thereby promoting the quality of life in our community. Now therefore be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Beaufort, South Carolina duly express their gratitude and commends Paul Trask for his outstanding service to the city during this tenure. And this witness, July 8th, 2025. And of course, that only touches the surface of the many things that Mr. Trask has done for the city during his lifetime. Thank you, sir. Speech.
I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve on the commission. It's a very strong commission that you have. Just to reiterate a little bit of what Mike Tomey said, you've got some real professionals there, and I encourage you to pay a close attention to the work product that comes out of the commission and so forth. So I've got just a couple of things to say. That was number one. Number two, I'd be remiss if I didn't make a comment about something that I feel strongly about, and that's the situation that's just evolved with the chamber. And I'm sorry, but I just can't be quite as diplomatic as my former colleague Mike Tomey was. So I want you to understand, at least from my perspective, some things that have happened here. So Chapter 7 and 9, which is the subject of your second reading and approval tonight, first came to the Planning Commission's attention in April 15th of 2024, and it was published. Okay, the red line of Chapter 9 was published online, available for anyone. Again, on May the 20th, June the 5th, June the 17th, 2024. 7 and 9, Chapter 7 and 9, red lines were both published first on July 15th, again on August the 12th, August the 19th, on September the 3rd. Now I'm talking about a red line, a full rendition of the code as marked up, and these things progressed. The comments changed as we went along. Again, on September 16th, October the 1st, and on. 20 separate times. Chapter 9 was available, a red line of the work product that the Planning Commission was working on the internet. Anyone could see it. Anyone could attend those meetings. Anyone could attend the work sessions that went along with it. So finally, in December of last year, on the 16th, Planning Commission decided that Chapter 7 was good to go. And so we wanted to finish Chapter 9 because they're very closely related, 7 and 9. We wanted to have 9 ready to present to council. So moving forward in February the 4th of this year, the commission determined that 7 and 9 were ready. On the 10th of February, the commission approved 7 and 9 unanimously. Director Freeze instructed us that 7 and 9 would go to the city attorney and then would come to council. And so we moved on to another hot button issue, and there are many in the code, and the code needs a lot of work. Another hot button issue, which is the landscaping and lighting ordinance. All of this takes a lot of time. So on June the 10th, this city council held a public hearing and first reading of 7 and 9. The mayor opened the public hearing for comment. There was no comment from anyone, and council voted unanimously to move 7 and 9 forward. Right after that, you received a letter from the Chamber of Commerce right here. That letter said that they're looking for a collaborative process and more time to ensure an efficient, transparent, and predictable development process. Transparent? I don't know how you could be more transparent than what has been available, that the city has made available to the general public. Now, I'll tell you this. There have been lots of people that have come to these work sessions and the regular sessions. Lee Sundrella, Cynthia Jenkins from HPF, when we were talking about demolition and historic district issues, they were there religiously. Coastal Conservation League, Grant was there, Jesse was there, and many, many, many citizens from the public were there to express their interest. Not one time, ever. And I never missed a meeting, not one meeting. I had to leave 1 hour early on one of them, which I hated. But not one time did a representative from the Chamber of Commerce ever attend one of these meetings, not once. I'm sorry, it's shameful. It doesn't work. It's unacceptable. And so I'm going to encourage you to move forward. Later on your agenda this evening, you're going to have an opportunity to hold a second public hearing and vote. And I encourage and urge you to move forward on that. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and we worked hard on all of this business, and I hope it'll move forward. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a resolution honoring the career and legacy of Mark Robertson and proclaiming July 11th, 2025 as Mark Robertson Day in the city of Beaufort, South Carolina.
So moved.
Have a second. Motion second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 You got it?
I got it.
Okay. Ready? We're gonna go now. Mark, you can come up.
Whereas Mark Robertson has been a trusted voice on the airways in the greater Beaufort area for an extraordinary 48 years, dedicating his talent, charisma, and passion to keeping our community informed, entertained, and connected. And whereas throughout his remarkable broadcasting career, Mark has become more than a local radio personality. He has become a beloved household name, known for his warmth, wit, authenticity behind the microphone. And whereas, in addition to his professional achievements, Mark Robertson has consistently gone above and beyond to give back to his community, volunteering countless hours in support of charitable causes, community events, and public service initiatives. And whereas his generous spirit, servant leadership, and unwavering support of local organizations and individuals have made a lasting impact on the lives of many in Beaufort and surrounding region. And whereas Mark's legacy is one of dedication, integrity, and heartfelt service, qualities that exemplify the best of what it means to be a member of this community. And whereas on the occasion of his well-earned retirement on July 11th, 2025, it is fitting that the city of Beaufort express its deep appreciation and formally recognize his many contributions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Beaufort, South Carolina, hereby honors and commends Mark Robertson for his outstanding career and legacy of service to our community. And be it further resolved that the City Council does hereby proclaim Friday, July 11th, 2025 as Mark Robertson Day in the City of Beaufort and encourages all citizens to join in celebrating his achievements, legacy, and enduring impact in our community. Adopted this 8th day of July, 2025 by the City Council of the City of Beaufort, South Carolina. Signed, Philip E. Cromer, Mayor.
Get a picture? Yeah. Got it.
Thank you all. That's very, very nice. I appreciate it. Beaufort is where my dream started in 1977. I lived in Polk Village for 8 years, and the radio station was just about a mile further on 21 across from the old Village Inn Pizza.
Yep.
I knew the path well because I walked it every day. I didn't have a car, and I didn't know how to drive. My goal was to get my feet wet, to learn radio, and to move on. But what I found was an accepting and caring community and felt no need to look any further than the Low Country. And speaking of dreams, congratulations, Neil, on realizing your dream, finally ending up on The Price is Right after multiple trips to California. But you know all about winning because in 48 years on the air, I think you won more prizes from me than anyone else. The one I was most happy to see you win was going backstage at the Savannah Civic Center to meet the legendary Robin Williams. I know how much that meant to you. Neil kept saying to me, "Don't you want to come with me?" I said, "No, this is your prize. You enjoy it." So I'm glad I could make that happen. So thank you again for this honor. I appreciate it. And thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any changes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on, we'll go to the minutes of work session and regular meeting, June 10th, 2025. Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Have a second? Okay, any discussion, changes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, now on to old business. Public hearing and second reading on an ordinance amending Chapter 7 Land Development and Chapter 9 Development Review Procedures of the Beaufort Development Code. I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak on Chapter 7 and Chapter 9? Okay.
Hi, Lisa Sunderla, Historic Beaufort Foundation. I want to commend the Planning Commission and council and of course our planning staff who have worked so diligently and so hard on this. As Mr. Trask said, I was in attendance, as was our former executive director, Cynthia Jenkins, at every single one of the Planning Commission meetings in order to be able to offer input, in order to be able to answer questions if they had questions, but also be a part of the participatory process. There were work sessions held where down in the planning conference room that were open to the public as well, where we had a great dialogue and a great discussion about the various questions, the various concerns, and trying to ensure that there was not only a navigable code for our community to be able to follow and to understand, but also a predictable code so that they would know going forward what to expect, what they would need to do, and how to do it. And I think those questions have all been answered with all the work that has been done now. I was amazed going through that document and kind of refreshing my memory on all that we did last year and into this year in the work sessions for that effort and how seamless it seems as you go through it. I was very pleased to see the improvements to the traffic impact analysis section. I was pleased to see the strengthening that was happening with regard to historic review board oversight and planning staff oversight. I think a lot of questions were addressed, a lot of good solutions came out of the process, and I ask on behalf of Historic Beaufort Foundation that y'all move forward today with approving, I guess it's second reading, and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angela. Anyone else? Ms. White? Give us your name and address and affiliation.
Good evening, Jessie White with the Coastal Conservation League, 1211 Harrington Street. I don't want to be repetitive. I just want to echo basically everything Lisa said, and just commend the Planning Commission for the detail with which they went through the code, the number of hours that was spent thinking through not only making sure that the requirements were going to be strong and protective of the city and the community's interests, but do they make sense? And really working through how they would be applied and understanding how these code sections would be applied, because that can be a distinction. You know, you could come up with a rule that sounds good on paper, but if you're not thinking through how it might be applied in practice, that's where issues may arise. And so it was just a very substantive and deliberative process. And I think that the amount of time that was spent is worthy of your consideration to move forward. We understand if there's still a need to work through some concerns that have been raised, but we do believe that there's been ample opportunity for input and review over the past year and a half. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Barton Walker?
Mayor, members of the commission, I'm Bill Bardenwerper. We're at 2013 Bay Street. And I want to first thank Mike, Tommy, and Paul Trask, and also Lisa and Jesse, and all the other citizens who showed up to give us their comments and work with us through all the work sessions and meetings that we had. It was very productive. As to the Chamber of Commerce comments, Mike and I and your planning director, Kurt, and his assistant, Chris, went over those today. We spent an hour and a half on them. It looked like a lot, but it really wasn't that much. They were mostly questions. There were probably, there were a handful of things that probably small corrections that could be made but weren't essential. Our view was, if you want to take another month, it won't hurt. We'd be happy to sit down with them. I leave town for a month or so, and I'd be happy to do it before I leave town with Mike and Kurt and meet with the chamber to go over and answer their questions. But on the other hand, I think it's actually in good enough shape that you could pass it tonight. We'll just leave that up to you. But I didn't want you to be left with the impression that we either ignored them, which we did not do, and we looked at them today thinking maybe there was more to them. I went over them in detail over the weekend, as did Mike, and then we met with staff today. And I think our conclusion was that they were mostly comments, questions, good questions, and we can probably resolve those in a meeting. So I think the collective wisdom, her feeling was that we leave it up to you to decide whether you want to vote on it tonight because it is in good shape, or wait another month, but not overreact and think there's really anything major of disagreement there. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Megan?
Evening, Council. My name is Megan Morris, and I'm with the Beaufort Regional Chamber of Commerce, which is not just me by any stretch of the imagination. We serve and advocate for almost 700 members, which are businesses in our region. First, we again want to thank the city and the Planning Commission for their hard work on the proposed revisions to Section 7 and 9 of the Beaufort Code. It was obviously a very major undertaking. There were many versions of the changes. After obtaining the full red line version that council received after the first hearing, we conducted a thorough collaborative review. Tonight, we're formally requesting that the second reading of this ordinance be delayed to allow for additional public input, stakeholder engagement, and technical refinement of the draft language that is now the final version, full red line version. This request is not made lightly. We understand and share the goal of this code update should serve the city and its citizens well into the future. That's precisely why final language must be clear, implementable, and carefully considered. Our review is guided by 4 core priorities that we believe are essential to Beaufort's continued prosperity. First, protection of property rights and fair treatment of landowners. Second, ensuring an efficient, transparent, and predictable development process. Third, consideration of the substantial number of related businesses to the development field that contribute through commercial property taxes and employ thousands of Beaufort residents. And fourth, addressing the urgent need for housing, including workforce and attainable housing, and making sure that that is still an option through the code's changes. Our detailed review identified some concerns that we feel warrant further attention before final adoption. We've openly provided our comprehensive review and written comments to Council and the Planning Commission. We're not asking you to abandon this important work, just the opposite. We're asking you to give it the time and collaboration at the council level to ensure that the final product truly serves all of Beaufort's citizens and supports our economic vitality. The stakes are high, the impact is significant. So we hope you will consider addressing substantive concerns, and we respectfully request that you take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close this public hearing. All right, now to second reading on the ordinance amending Chapter 7 Land Development and Chapter 9 Development Review Procedures of the Beaufort Development Code. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, open it up for discussion. I'll go to Councilman Scaletti first, since he's online, if he has anything to comment.
I do. Yeah, so we're doing both 7 and 9 right now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So first, I want to take the opportunity, and I hope you guys can hear me well. I'm gonna do my best to get through this. It's very hard for me, zooming in like this, but I want to take the opportunity to thank the Planning Commission, and everybody that was involved, all of the stakeholders that showed up to have those discussions. And this has been a very lengthy process. I think even more lengthy than what a lot of us originally anticipated when it started. But I want to ask a couple of questions, and then I'll probably break it down into sections and start with 7 and then go to Chapter 9. So the first question I have can be for Kurt, if he's there.
He's here.
Okay.
He's here. He's making his way to the
Let's
podium.
come up to the witness box.
I'm a little nervous here since he's.
It's all right.
Other.
All right,
A lot of
John.
questions.
All right, so first, and where I'm going right now is to the permitting chart. So let me get there. It is, I think it's page 241. So page 241 for council. And specifically the preliminary plat portion. It says preliminary plat, the discretion at admin and TRC, permit good for 24 months with a 12-month one-time extension. And then if I go to page 217, which is in
We're trying to get that.
chapter 7, it says approval will automatically, so a preliminary plat approval is in full force and effect for a period of 2 years, which matches the 24 months from the date of approval. Approval will automatically expire at the end of 2 years unless an applicant formally requests an 18-month extension from the Planning Commission prior to termination or submits a completed final plat. So I'm not sure if I'm reading that wrong, but why would they have the option to extend for an 18-month period of time on page 217, but then on page 241, they would have a 12-month one-time extension?
Okay. Josh, I think Tracy was informing us that the page numbers you have are from the last agenda and the new agenda are a little different, but I think your question is basically why is one 12 months and one's 18 months? Is that correct?
That's correct. On the yes. Well, we were told to use the old from last month just to save paper, which makes sense, but I'm sorry that throws the numbers off, but that is
I
the
mean, I'll
question.
try to find it, but it's over 500 pages, so it's, but, you know, if, I think that's a pretty minor change, if, you know, depending on what you do tonight, it probably should be consistent, right? You know, it should probably be one or the other. So,
No, it definitely should. And that's the thing is, so I brought this up last month. I was hoping that it'd be changed here. And then it's also not on the final plat, which is on the same page for me. It's on the permitting chart. But again, that says 24 months with a one-time 12-month extension, and then the language doesn't match in section G. So I guess the frustration for me is bringing this up prior and it's still not being corrected, but it makes it hard for me to approve the permitting chart because I don't want to put the city in a position of having a contradiction in the development code that puts us in a legal bind further down the road. And I know that we can rectify this stuff pretty quickly, but my hopes are that what we can do is find some common ground on some of the bigger issues that need to be addressed immediately. And when I think about what those issues are, for me, it's land conservation and preservation, which is found in the changes that the Planning Commission is proposing in the open space and green space chart, and the requirements that are now would require developments to have a certain percentage of land be preserved. I like that. We were pretty clear on that leading up to this, and so I appreciate those changes, and I think that for the most part, our community could rally behind that and any relief that we can provide in regards to traffic congestion, which is exactly what the traffic impact analysis adjustments do, because now it requires that if a development is vested or is approved but hasn't started the permitting process yet, then any new development that comes behind it has to consider that development with their traffic impact analysis. And I think that's a very important loophole that caused some of the congestion that we see today. And so I think those are very big changes. And what I would hate to do is I would hate to not pass any of this just because it still has some flaws. And so I'm willing and ready to go through and kind of express to council where I feel like we could adopt most of chapter 7. I have maybe a question for the planning commission in regards to some of the comments that we received from the chamber. And that would be in section 7.1.6, the easement and utility standards. So they pointed out that those standards were not identified elsewhere in the code. When you guys reviewed just today and over the weekend some of the comments that they expressed, what was your conclusion on that specific section?
Yeah, I think I would kind of echo what Bill Bardenwerper just stated a little earlier, as we did go through everything. And, there were a few things that the chamber caught that were somewhat minor. And, if I can find the right section, the 18-month, 12-month would probably be one that we correct. But they were somewhat minor, and I think there was really only one substantive issue. And, I think if you're talking about like having utility providers sign off on things, I think we agree that that could probably go away. Just a few other, can you state the?
Yeah, no, for sure. So it says specifically, it says, let me find out where to start here. So screening and fencing required and subject to city approval, but no standards for such approval are stated or referenced.
Do you know what section number that is? John?
Yes, it is section 7.1.6.
Page 4.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that the chamber made any comments on that, but I could be wrong. What was your issue with that, I guess?
Well, I couldn't find where that was referenced, so I didn't know when Bill and Mike were reviewing this, if they had in fact found where it was referenced, that we were basically defining what that screening and fencing looked like to address that specific concern that the chamber brought up.
Okay, I must have missed that on there. I was just going through their other copy. I think that's kind of one of those minor issues that we could revisit, but we pretty much looked at it all, and I think we could have like a document really tomorrow if you want, with a lot of those revisions, or really by the end of the week, so.
Is that covered in chapter 5.4?
I'd have to check chapter 5.4, but, go ahead.
Well, if I might, I didn't really say, that's really getting into some minutia. I think the issue is that if you have transformer boxes and switching boxes, what we propose in the code is that they just be screened. That's all. And I don't know that we have to have detailed standards on what that screen looks like. We received a comment from the chamber about it, just sort of saying, what about it? But we really didn't think there was more to that. But that's one of those things, if they wanted to sit down and talk about what kind of fence to put around a transformer, we can do that, but it seems sort of self-evident to us, not to be argumentative, but.
Okay, one more thing while you're there, Bill. Section 7.2.1, which is street infrastructure plans. This was a concern brought up about discussing encroachment and easement agreements, and then also the requirement for street frontage improvements prior to the final plat. And it almost gave the impression that there was a requirement for the street frontage improvements to be made before a developer received final plat. Is that in fact what is being insinuated?
Let me look at that, if I can determine that.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to catch you off guard.
All right, we gotta just find it here.
So you're speaking about 7.1.2, is that right?
7.2.1 and street infrastructure plans is where I'm at right now.
Basically, the streets are. (7.2.1).
Is it not addressed in the applicability section right above that? Where it says this installation of street frontage improvements is required prior to final plat approval for major subdivisions and certificates of occupancy for site plans.
It's not addressed there. It's just pointed out that it is required prior to, and I didn't know if that's what was insinuated. That's new language. So it's requiring those improvements be made prior to the final plat being received. And I didn't know if that was the intent, if that was.
Well, I guess I'm having a hard time I don't remember that we talked about this today, actually, but I'm not sure that that's what it actually says.
It does say that.
7.2.
Me. Go to 7.2.1.
Scope of improvements along the center line if I'm so proposing, okay.
Talking about section, 7.2.1 C2.
Yeah, 2, there we go. Now we found it.
Is
Okay.
that what you talked about, Councilman?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, those can be bonded. I mean, that's how you do development, right? You have to, basically before either bond the improvements, right? Before we release the final plat, but, let me
I
see.
think it said. does it really
The
even
street
say
shall
that?
be installed along the entire. Again, I guess I'm having a hard time seeing where it just says that you're responsible, that you have to install them, and I think that's,
The way these things are normally done, you
Yeah.
either,
yeah,
you either install it before platting or you plat it and you bond.
yeah, but it doesn't state
And
that.
that's always.
I think there's a reference here in this, in the chamber's comments that, I think a few were, we had I think their conclusion and what I read, and I think, I don't know if you share my opinion, are two different things, and I don't see that it's required at all, just that you have to do the improvements, but it's not required
No,
before.
it says earlier, the installation of street frontage improvement shall be a condition of final plat approval. And that's where it's done the same way everywhere, is you don't, if you either install it prior to final plat approval or you bond it, you have final plat and then you bond it. And that's the way that it's done, and we don't intend to do it any differently in here, and I don't think it says anything
Yeah, and-
differently than that.
I guess I'm really having a hard time why that's. Because if we didn't have that in there, then we would have no ability to require the improvements. That's why the surety is the bond to make sure that, if they don't install the improvements, that we have a bond to actually call. And then the city can install the improvements because, we've created some lots and there's potential development and we can complete the sidewalks, the streets, et cetera. So we're giving them, or they can do it pre-loaded. Essentially, they can put it all in before we approve that and allow those subdivisions to occur. So, I mean, essentially what we're doing is we're protecting both the bank, the citizen, the public, and the developer.
Gives the developer the option to do it. one way or the
Exactly.
other.
And we're giving the developer the option to bond it, which, gives them time, right, to basically create these lots. and time to make the improvements because we're holding the bond. And then we release the bond when they're installed. I mean, that's kind of a basic, I guess that's why we're having a hard time understanding this, but that's just, I think that's in the current code, and if it's not, it should be, but it's in every
That's the
code I
basic
know.
way that all infrastructure and subdivisions is done, that order, that option.
Okay. Well, with that, as far as chapter 7 goes, I'm okay with most everything in chapter 7, with the exception of, I would like if we postponed section 7.1.6, which is the easement and utility standards, just so that you guys can work with the chamber to identify if those standards are referenced and we're defining what screening we're talking about. And then I would like to, since this is second reading, postpone section 7.2.5, which is the street tree planting requirements, because when we get to chapter 5, I'm okay passing that for first reading, but I really would like our Parks and Tree Advisory Committee to be a part of the discussion before we have it in second reading, because those are the volunteers that we have that are passionate about that topic. I'd really like for them to weigh in on this section, but also that chapter, and I don't know that they have already.
Josh, the chairman of PTAC, was in most of the work sessions for chapter 5.
So has their board reviewed the language that's being proposed in chapter 5 and in this street tree planting requirement section?
I don't know if their board has, because they've been, I think the PTAC has kind of been, I don't know if they've had membership or even a quorum for a long time, but I know their chairman has been to almost all of the chapter 5 meetings, stretching into last year. In fact, we had a special subcommittee with her, we had an arborist who donated his time. We had a Coastal Conservation League and a few other citizens that I think we had about 5 meetings, would you say, Jesse, that the chairman of the PTAC attended all of those meetings? And I think she was the only person that's still on the PTAC or.
Well, I think we got a full board now.
Recently.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, that's really up to you, but I don't, it's up to you, but I know the chairman has been involved in this whole process, and that board wasn't kind of in composition for a lot of the time that we've been doing this, but.
In respect to the fact that they are together now, and I feel like the individuals that we have appointed are extremely passionate about this, I'd at least like for them to be able to review what's being proposed in chapter 5, and then in this section 7.2.5 for the street tree planting requirements as well, just to see if they have any alternative thoughts. But I'm not opposed to any of the language in there, but just in appreciation for that body to weigh in on this discussion. And I am happy to hear that the chair was there for those meetings. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, sure. Not a problem.
So, and then I struggle with section 7.5, the subdivision and site plan standards, and that is just because of the contradictions in that section and the permitting chart. And so I would propose that essentially all of chapter 7 be passed with the exception of section 7.1.6, 7.2.5, and 7.5.
And would you like us to send those back to the planning commission, or?
I would like those to
comment?
go, if, I'm not sure what the rest of council feels about that. I would like to sit down with the planning commission in a work session and try to better understand the context of some of those changes, more than what we can get from the meeting, actually having that discussion, but then also including the chamber in that conversation and trying to iron out some of their concerns as it pertains to those sections as well. So I think it's very minuscule and really some of the issues in chapter or section 7.5 just needs to be scrubbed, but I would hate passing that with language that contradicts the permitting chart.
If I can answer, yeah, sure. And we've already gone over that. And, I think the positive thing is I think we would really like, the chamber and the businesses to be part of this. And I think they made some good comments. And, I think we agreed on a lot of them today, the chairman and I. But I think the important thing is there was really only one that felt like it was a major comment. But we can have that meeting very quickly if that's your will to, I think he did identify the majority of the comments that were sent in the letter were in 7.5, I think. But I'm just responding to Josh, so you guys can. So.
And then in chapter 9, obviously the chart is still an issue, but I would also make an amendment, and the amendment would be to the demolition section. And basically what that would look like is I think that we should have an expiration on the certificate of appropriateness for 24 months with basically, if you were to get a permit within that time as an applicant, then you would have 6 months to move forward with the demolition with the option for a one-time 6-month extension. So it would mean that essentially from certificate of appropriateness, you would have 3 years to move forward with that demolition, and then it would expire. And that is only if you got your permit within that 24-month window and then applied for your extension within 1 month of it expiring. That would give you an additional 6 months, and then you could extend that one time. But I would like to have that factored into section 9.1.4, and I would be prepared to make that amendment after hearing from the rest of council on 7 and 9.
The only thing I would say about that, Josh, is we did discuss that early on, and those changes to that, I think it's 9.11, were sent, but they haven't been acted on. But we haven't been acting on the certificate of appropriateness since June or May of last year. And so it wasn't included in this document. So I'm not sure if that's something that should be, or if that's something that you might want to send back if you have, these other things to kind of discuss with the planning commission first, or if that, because I think the planning commission has to act on it before it can be adopted. I don't have a problem with your motion, and but I think probably people want to discuss it. So.
Yeah, I was under the impression that you guys already had talked about it, and I guess
We
that to me
had,
is one
we
of those
had.
issues that
We
are
had.
are big enough that we don't want to continue to kick it down the road. So I would like to get that passed while we have this open, and then we can, have our meetings with the planning commission. But again, that's just my
We
my
had,
thought.
and then if you remember at your strategic plan, sorry, I'm talking about, you're bringing up a lot of stuff here, but we created a subcommittee with the Historic Review Board. If you remember, that was kind of the direction I think council gave us, and we've met, and I think we're going to be on the next work session. But it's been a pretty good working group, and I think we had some ideas about that section of the code to bring forward, kind of back to the planning commission and the city council, and that group included HPF, the Freedmen's Arts District, the HRB, and the planning commission and staff. And I think everybody agreed on some major changes that were not a completely different direction. And so we were going to present that next month. And I think that's a really good group because it brings everyone together, right? That had some issues. So
Okay.
I'm just trying to state that because I know what you're proposing is a major change. And
Okay, thank you.
You done, Josh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other member of council want to comment?
Offering
Mitch?
amendments?
Yeah,
I think he's going to go back and do one.
So I also want to start off by commending all the folks who put in all the hard work. I mean, this is a big book to carry around. It's kind of weighty.
because folks have put so much work into it. So thanks to everyone whose name is in the commission has been mentioned for that. I just want to get clarification. I'm not sure Josh's suggestion or proposal that certain portions of chapter 7 can be stripped out, because that's not what's on the agenda. Either we are voting on, 9A as is, you start stripping things out. Now we're not voting on what's on the agenda. So I think if we're taking things out, then we're going to postpone it because it has to be reworded. And if I'm wrong, I can be corrected. But if we start taking things out, then it's no longer what's on the agenda. So that's the same as saying we're going to postpone it, send it back to staff to work it, to decide how we move forward. The other comment I want to make is, and I don't know whether this can be a back and forth, but I do have concerns, and the conversation has led me to believe that the chamber has not been at these meetings prior to Megan's comment and letter that she presented at our June meeting. And if that is correct, I think that's a foul on the part of the chamber. At the same time, I feel that while this is urgent, it's not an emergency. People's not going to fall in the river if we don't allow some time to be totally inclusive, so that, if they weren't at the previous meetings, I agree they should have been, but at the same time, they are the chamber and representing businesses here, and to give a week or whatever is the right amount of time to make sure that their views are included, so that we can truly do our very best inclusively with this code, I think is worth the time.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'd like to make a motion unless you have any comments to make.
I'll go forth.
Okay.
You haven't heard, Mayor, you didn't have any comments?
Well, it seems to me we're boiling down to either we pass the thing now and then go back and look at some of the areas where we have issues, meeting with the chamber and with the planning commission, with the council, and try to iron out some of that stuff and come back and make amendments, or you postpone it for a month until we can have that meeting and then come back and vote for it. But I don't think I want to push it beyond August.
Can we get clarification on whether or not we can separate and pass portions and then iron out other portions, or do we have to pass this all in one lump sum as it is, or postpone it?
Mr. Mayor, point of privilege, to answer that question, you can introduce an intervening amendment to strike certain portions of the amendment, of the ordinance as presented, and keep other portions if you desire. However, given the complexity of the changes and the differences of opinion that I'm hearing, my recommendation to you would be to schedule a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and to table second reading on chapters 7 and 9 until that meeting can be held and we can move forward with the second reading.
Which I think is what Mr.
Okay, now
Gibson
can I
was
make my
about to say.
motion? Okay, I want to make a motion that we postpone approval of chapter 7 and 9 until we can meet with the planning commission in between our August meeting. And at this time, August, we will consider yes or no for the approval.
Second.
Yeah, second. Any discussion on the amendment?
No, I'll just say that I still feel like, I know that we intend to get that done quickly and hope so, but I intend to vote no on this. And the reason is because I do feel like there is some substantial changes that are very well done, to include A, the traffic impact analysis chart, and B, the open space and land preservation portion. And I would rather see those sections be passed, and then we can flesh out the rest of it as needed. But I don't feel like passing those sections will contradict anything else that's not passed tonight. So that's why I'm going to be a no vote on this.
Yeah, I understand your concerns, Councilman Scalati, and I do respect them. But I really, I think we really need to hear everything put everything on the table for 7 and 9.
Can that be arranged within short order?
Yeah, we've already gone through them all, so, I think just the context and, if there's a representative on some of them, why they're making some of the comments, I think is what we lack, because, we've got a handwritten kind of document, so, it's a little hard to
Yeah.
ask
And
those questions.
I know it's summertime, so a lot of people on vacation. Does that do you have a problem herding the cats, I guess is the,
No, I mean, we could have that done
Yeah.
this week. I mean, we already did it today.
Yeah, I would know that I'm gonna be going out of town the end of next week, and if they could meet with us real quickly, I think we can answer all their questions.
Okay.
And if you all want to participate in that, obviously you're more than welcome, although I don't think you'll find it as pleasant as you think, just because we're talking about, really some minutia. And if you want to dig into it as well, that's fine, but I'm guessing that from our meeting today, that probably just some explanations to the chamber and to Councilman Scalati, and everybody will come around. I'm betting that'll be the case.
so I guess to call the question on the amendment to postpone for a month. All in favor signify by saying aye.
You have
Aye.
to say that? No.
Nay.
I'll vote. What's that? That's
It's
3-2.
3-2.
3-2.
It'll help get this settled.
My question was, are you postponing it for a month that you don't need to have a time on a tabled? It can be brought up. We can have a special meeting. We can do it more
No,
expeditious.
You're right, yeah.
We don't need to do it for a month.
Okay.
It'll be Christmas by the time we're finished.
You want to make a motion?
No,
to-
no, you're fine. It's already passed.
All
I
right,
voted against it.
okay. Well, thank you. Okay, let's see.
Excuse me.
It's a motion to postpone till we can have the meeting. And then I
In
guess
August, we'll hear it again.
unless we call a special meeting, it'll have to go on the August agenda. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We will work to establish a meeting date as soon as possible to have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. I will probably confer with yourself and the chair of the Planning Commission on the time to have that. It may be more than just a 2-hour meeting in the afternoon, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. And Mayor Pro Tem McPhee is correct. We do not have to wait until August 19th. We can schedule a special meeting for second reading. I would like to point out, however, the ordinances that will come to you in second reading will look exactly like it does now. You will have to introduce amendments, intervening amendments, to change what you see right now, because what you see right now are the changes that resulted from first reading.
Okay, I guess we go ahead and since we passed it to postpone it for a month, let's go ahead and have the meeting as quickly as possible. And then if we have to schedule a special meeting and address the amendment or any amendments, we will.
We will get on that, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
All right. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on. Next item of business is a public hearing, and I'm gonna go ahead and open it up in second reading for an ordinance to annex 1.72 acres of real property identified as Beaufort County Tax Map Number R 100-026-000-0151-0000, 3659 Trask Parkway to the city of Beaufort pursuant South Carolina Code annotated 53-153. So I'm gonna open up the public hearing on this. Anyone wish to speak to it? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Ask for a motion for an ordinance to annex this 1.72 acres of real property on 3659 Trask Parkway to the city of Beaufort.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, second readings and final. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Yeah, okay.
Aye.
All right, next we have a public hearing and second reading for an ordinance to amend the City of Beaufort zoning district map to include real property identified as Beaufort County Tax Map Number R 100-026-000-0151-0000, 3659 Trask Parkway to be zoned regional mixed use, RMX. I'm going to open the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak? Hearing none, close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to accept the ordinance to amend the zoning district map for this piece of property?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Next is an ordinance to amend Part 8 Motor Vehicles and Traffic and Chapter 2 Parking of the City of Beaufort Code of Ordinances. This is second reading.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, JJ, you want to give us an overview?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. For some background for council and for the public on this, these updates started last year when the city attorney and I started reviewing ordinances. We brought the tow truck portion of the ordinance to council that has already been updated previously. The reason that we brought these to council when we did, we started this process back in March of this year, was to clarify, to just do some general housekeeping, cleaning up language, and two, to clarify that the private parking enforcement that the city utilizes is operating as code enforcement officers. Council knows there's pending litigation across the state regarding parking enforcement, and after staff and the city attorney worked with the municipal association and those other municipalities, and looking at Attorney General's opinions and case law, it was recommended that we clarify that point and specifically state that that our parking enforcement attendants, whether they be police officers or civilians, are operating as code enforcement officials. We had a work session where we discussed this in March, and then in April, on April 8th, 2025, we had first reading of this ordinance, which passed first reading. Then after that, we realized, staff realized that there had been some changes made back in 2015 to the ordinance after the parking task force recommendations were made that had never been codified in the published ordinance. So at the May 13th work session, we announced that we had pulled this item off of the agenda for second reading. We went over those changes in the work session, and then we held first reading of the cleaned up version that included those 2015 changes, the new housekeeping changes from the city attorney, and the code enforcement officer language. On June 10th of this year, we held first reading, and then today is second reading on this matter. That's just to clarify the background. Again, the changes that you have in here, you have a clean version as well as a red line version. It mostly has to do with housekeeping, updating some language, and clarifying that code enforcement is being done, or parking enforcement is being done as part of the city's code enforcement responsibilities. Does council have any questions about the process that got us here or the proposed ordinance in front of you?
Questions from council? Okay, thank you, JJ.
Yeah, I don't have any questions about the process that got us here. I was, let me see, I was gonna ask a question on metered parking, section 8, 2002, subsection B. It says, couple paragraphs down, parking on Port Republic Street and side streets north of Port Republic Street shall have a time limitation of 4 hours. I think right now, I looked today, and on the Park Beaufort website, it's advertised as 2 hours on Port Republic Street. So I'm in favor of 4 hours. I think that's more appropriate, but I guess what I'm saying is it would be important for the website to match the 4 hour limitation. And I looked all along Port Republic Street, and it was all said 2 hours. So I wanted to point that out. And then I wanted to see if there was some institutional thought behind why we have parking in the library lot and playground lot limited to 2 hours, because I feel like for, say, families that are going either to the library or to the park, you hit the playground, you're there for an hour, then maybe you go get some ice cream or something. 2 hours is a pretty short window, and it's not like you can just add more time and get an additional 2 hours, because um, that's not allowed either. So I was just wondering what the thought process was behind limiting those two lots to 2 hours.
Well, institutionally, I can tell you the reason that was discussed because the limited parking in both those locations to generate turnover so that people didn't stay longer. I'm not, the marina the parking lot by the playground may be, but the library parking lot, you can extend in the library parking lot.
That is
Me
correct.
and you are on the parking committee, so do you? Okay.
And the
Turnover, yeah.
4 hours on Port Republic and the side streets going north is how it's supposed to be. If the website, and I'm pretty sure the meters are that way,
Yeah, we would check that and,
but
we
that
would
is how it was
update it.
originally written.
That is my understanding, is that's what it's supposed to be. If this passes second reading tonight, that would be part of a full review of the website and what our meters state. Also, Councilman Scaletti, in section B there was one scrivener's error. I apologize, I forgot to point out that Megan with the Chamber of Commerce pointed out to us. We reference 90-minute parking in front of the Chamber of Commerce building.
Visitor
And
Center.
yeah, and that is the CVB building now.
But
Carnegie Library is what the language we proposed to change that, and that was just a scrivener's error. We didn't get that updated.
Okay. And couple one more thing. Let's see. So I guess, and I was getting the extension from meter feeding, section 8/2012, where it says no person shall continuously park a vehicle in any on-street parking meter zone longer than the maximum limit of parking time obtainable by a single operation of such meter. But I guess that doesn't pertain to the playground lot and the library lot. Is that correct? Because it would just be on
I know
street.
it doesn't, the library lot, I know it doesn't. The playground lot, I'm not sure because all of the Bay Street area was considered in the 2 hour. Linda, do you have updates?
Are there any 8-hour parking anywhere down there?
What's that?
8 hours there anywhere?
No. When you get to Craven Street, that's 8 hours.
Okay, I'm just thinking about employees.
Port Republic is, no, and those are hang tags and that's different.
What's the question?
Come to the matrix. So the parking lot at the playground is on the southern side of Bay Street, which has always been 2 hour max limit.
That is
We
correct.
did the 2 hour max limit at the marina park, at the playground parking on the marina, on the waterfront park, and the 2 hours in the library to encourage turnover.
Correct.
But you can feed the library meters,
You can feed the library meters,
but
but
you can't feed
you
the
cannot feed the,
playground
cannot-
meters.
not the
Everything,
playground-
everything on Bay Street and south, other than the marina parking lot, is a max 2 hours, no matter what.
Correct.
Right.
Are there
Okay.
What
any,
this says.
Linda, are there any 8-hour parking down there?
Where?
Downtown, 8 hours, where would that be? Is there any?
In the
Raven.
marina parking lot,
Marina.
there's the marina parking lot is 8 hours. The,
Craven
Scott
lots.
Street lot is
Okay.
8 hours. Craven Street is 8 hours with the exception of the 90-minute in front of the visitor center. And then
Okay.
at 500 Carteret Street.
Okay, I just want to make sure we got places where employees can park if they need to, and
Yes.
thank you.
And we do have the 500 Carteret hang tags and also Marina and Craven Street hang tags.
All that is yes, that's.
All the
monthly
8
parking.
hours.
All
at
your
hang
monthly
tags.
parking, and then in 500 Carteret, there is a designated employee discounted parking that's only $20 a month.
compared to $35.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm gonna, and I am going to make at least one attempt to amend the language here because I would like to see probably both, but at least the playground parking lot be 4 hours because again, if you can't extend that 2 hour time and you are a family, you don't want to go down there and have your kids play in the park and then go get some ice cream, you're really going to be crunched for time to squeeze that into a 2 hour window. And so I would like to see that extended to 4 hours. I think it makes more sense. I understand the thought process of turnover. And I think 4 hours provides enough time where you can actually spend some time downtown, but also not stay all day. So I'm gonna
But
make an
Josh,
amendment to
it's
that.
it's the same principle of making more than 2 hours on Bay Street so you can eat and shop.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to
That was
that
the
either,
reason
but
that we did it.
well, I'm just saying that I'm gonna try to make that amendment because I do feel like 4 hours is more appropriate for those parking lots for the library and for the playground. But there's a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. One, under section 82001, authority to establish zones. I know that we intend to talk about employee parking a little bit more in the upcoming months. So I wanted to potentially amend the language there to add employee parking as one of the established zones that we can establish. So I was going to amend the language in that paragraph just to simply add employee parking. JJ, from a legal perspective, is it a contradiction for we say parking in the Marina lot, Scott Street lot, Salta's lot, the Carteret Street lot, and on Craven Street, Bay Street Extension, and Newcastle Street shall not have a time limitation. So I think that was once 8 hours. And I guess it's the same to say have no time limitation if you only have a paying time from 11 to 7, 8 hours. But there we say shall not have a time limitation. And then on, let's see, on the next page, 315, we mention that there is a time limitation because if you are parked in a lot in excess of 24 hours, you may be cited for unauthorized parking. And then for 48 hours, you may be caused to be removed by any police officer. So would we want to put the 8-hour time limit back there opposed to the language that represents no time limitation at all?
Councilman Scaletti, my reading of that and in conversations with the city attorney, we didn't feel that there was any contradictions because section 8-2002 is specifically discussing metered parking and enforcement of metered parking. And then when you get to section 8-2003,
private property.
Yep. Is that private property? I'm trying to find the section that you referred to second.
Vehicles and property may be removed.
Yeah, it's more, that's more meant for leaving vehicles standing on the streets or public ways in excess of 48 hours. Is that the section you were talking about?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so it's, the metered parking has to do with metered enforcement. The left standing is a separate legal standard that you would look at. I don't think those two are in conflict with each other from an
Okay.
enforcement perspective.
And you'd say the same for section 8-2012 meter feeding, where it says no person shall continuously park a vehicle in any on-street parking meter zone longer than the maximum limit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
contradiction
don't
there?
think that's going to be an issue. 'Cause it refers
Okay.
back to the maximum limits that were identified.
And that has no time limit.
I don't believe so, sir.
No, I'm saying that's what it reads right now, is it has no time limitation. So I get if it points back to the limitation, and I think in all other cases where you have a time limitation, it makes sense. But here where we say these lots do not have a time limitation, my fear is that it contradicts the section where no person shall continuously park a vehicle in any on-street parking meter longer than the maximum limit. But I guess you're saying it doesn't.
Again, those are
Maximum limit.
separate enforcement mechanisms. There's a difference between somebody being beyond the metered parking enforcement. They didn't pay for their appropriate amount of time they were parking based on the meter. And then, I don't want to call it an abandoned vehicle, but a left standing vehicle for multiple days. From an enforcement standpoint, I don't believe there's any issues there because it's two separate issues that you're looking at.
Well, this is meter feeding, so this section is the same. 2012. So this section is not the abandoned vehicles. I understand the point that you made in regards to the vehicles on private property. I was saying for meter feeding.
But they wouldn't be charged with violating the meter feeding ordinance.
Okay.
That
If you don't
wouldn't-
have concerns about it, I'm good. I just wanted to point it out because it read as almost a conflict for me, and I didn't know if it would be better to keep language that identified an 8-hour time limitation opposed to not having a time limitation. But if you're good with it and you and the city attorney feel like there's no contradiction there, I'm good too. I just wanted to point it out. Do you feel like we should have, so under 2003, where it says vehicles and property may be removed, section B, any motor vehicle or other personal property parked or left standing upon the street or public ways of the city in excess of 48 hours may be removed or caused to be removed by any police officer. So that makes sense. Come down to G and it says any motor vehicle or personal property parked or left standing in the public parking spaces in any city parking lot in excess of 24 hours may be cited for unauthorized parking, and after 48 hours may be or caused to be removed by any police officer. Do you feel like we should potentially add language that reflected a citation after the 24-hour mark in B to match what's in G?
So Councilman Sleddy, my reading of section B would be if a vehicle were pulled over on the side of the road and left standing within the right of way, they would have 48 hours to remove that. And then section G is specific to actual parking spaces where a motor vehicle would otherwise legally be allowed to be parked. Does that differentiation make sense?
Yes, but you would say the one doesn't need a citation, the one that's just parked in the street in an unidentified parking place doesn't need a citation after 24 hours?
Normally,
Challenge here would be if you're on Carteret Street, before you get to the parking, metered parking, you're parked there. How are you going to determine when to start the 48 hours? You really can't. The only way you're going to be able to determine is
Off the
if
car.
some reason police has cited a car, there's a time stamp on something on the windshield, then the time starts. Otherwise, I could park in front of Singleton's parking lot forever. It's just, there's no meter there, so how are you going to start the 48 hours?
He's gonna call.
Oh, yeah, he would. call.
That was kind of, Mitch, that was kind of my point in the citation. I
so
think,
Again, if they're in an actual parking spot, beyond the 24 hours, then they would receive a citation, and generally the law enforcement would attempt to make some sort of notification. And then after 48 hours, it could be removed. The other that's section G. Section B refers to if a vehicle is just left within the right of way of the road, they're not in a legal parking spot. So normally this would be like a broken down vehicle. And I guess when this was originally drafted and looked at, and we pulled from other languages at other municipalities, the thought process was most likely that if the person's vehicle's broke down or it's in a public right of way where it's not necessarily supposed to be parked, you're going to give them that leeway.
So in other words, it would require some sort of intervention by law enforcement
Yes.
to start that time.
Yes, sir.
clock.
Well, that's not reflected here. It's just after 48 hours, it can be taken away, but there was no process by which that mechanism was triggered. There was no citation that started that time in B.
Well,
Sorry, was there a question?
from my perspective, it's kind of moot because
An
it,
office or?
it has to be, something has to initiate that clock. And the only thing I see that's going to initiate that clock is a law enforcement officer.
That's correct. Usually, law enforcement would see a vehicle stalled on the side of the road, or normally you would receive a complaint from the public, and then the officers respond, attempt to make contact, log the vehicle, and then after the 48-hour period, they could call the on-call rotation.
But there would be no citation on the car for that.
Unless it was illegally parked or otherwise, there wouldn't be any.
It would be illegally parked if it was left abandoned in the street.
And then it would be towed. That would be the citation.
Okay. Yeah, I still feel like it would be better to add the language that's in G, where you have a citation within 24 hours. But if
But
I
the
stand alone
citation
on that,
refers
it's
to
not
the
not
parking.
not a big deal.
Parking space. Yeah.
Section 8.2005. I looked at the adjusted copy, which for us is page 325, and still see town. So I don't know if that was just one that got left behind, but it's vehicles parked or left standing upon a public streets or public ways of the town in violation. Obviously, that would read of the city in violation.
I'm making that change right now, Councilman Scletti.
And then one last thing, and then I'll make the amendment or attempt to, but with the boot, I don't know that most people have been under the impression that there is this boot that we apply and a fee. I don't know of the city ever applying one. Maybe they did in the past. And my hopes would be that we could not get to the point to where we're not contracting this service out, but instead have officers down there. And I know that it would be an additional cost, but we pay for the management of this operation anyway. I just think it would be a lot better interface wise for us to have officers on the street down there, and whether it's a retirement opportunity or a part-time opportunity for officers to be down there and do this. I would rather see the city take over this operation, but I've expressed that before. But with the boot fee, what I wouldn't want to happen is say somebody has 3 citations that they got, 6 months ago, and then all of a sudden we put this in place, raise the boot fee to $100, and they get a boot next month. So I didn't know if there was the opportunity for us as we pass this to kind of clean the slate on that and start from here moving forward. But I just wouldn't want to see you know, us going out and starting to put boots on people's car when it's not really something, even if it's been in our ordinance, it's not really something that we've done before.
The language was left in the ordinance and just cleaned up a bit to make it more in line with other ordinances across the state. I can tell you, in my tenure here with the city, we have not booted any vehicles.
As far as I can remember, which goes way back, we have never booted a vehicle since the sixties.
Mayor, council, while that is a tool in our toolkit in this ordinance, it is not a standard practice or a preferred practice of the city to place a boot on a vehicle.
But you recommend we leave it in as a tool?
Yeah.
Yes.
in toolbox.
Yes.
And why is that?
So that we have the option if we have a vagrant abuser?
The priorities of council may change in the future. We may have a situation where parking becomes a problem where it's decided that mobilization is an appropriate approach. I hope that it never comes to that while I'm here, but just about every parking ordinance that I've ever worked on in both North and South Carolina has included a mobilization language.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to move to amend section 82001, authority to establish zones to add employee parking as an option. And to amend section 82002 metered parking to extend the parking time from 2 hours to 4 hours in both the library lot and the playground lot. And to amend section 8-2005 section C to reflect city opposed to town.
Mayor and council, I would recommend those amendments be made separately because those are all very different items. I would not tie those all together.
I agree. Did you hear
Well,
that, Josh?
Withdraw the.
I did, and I will restate the motion if that one fails.
Okay, do I have a second? Hearing none?
Okay, I'm going to restate the motion. Well, can I just say that we'll take those separately, or do I need to restate them all separately?
Restate them separately.
Okay, so I'm going to move to amend section 82001, authority to establish zones to add employee parking as an option.
Where is that? It's in two, isn't it?
Section 82001.
If it's your electronic copy, Councilman, it's page 312.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on it too.
Page 312 in ours.
I have the old one, it's 312.
Must too.
I have the old one too, 320.
It's the very first section within the ordinance. Just under the now therefore
Got
be
it,
it
got it,
ordained.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do I have a second on the motion, on the amendment?
Could you clarify something on that for me, please? For the employee parking zone, it doesn't specify where it's at and it's not established, correct?
Right now, it would fall within a restricted parking zone because it would be restricted to a
Okay,
certain
but there's
class.
nothing established as of now for that.
Yeah,
I
we
just want to
don't
make
have
sure.
that now. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, it could fall under the restricted, so.
Restricted would be anything if we said city employees, just hospitality or private sector employees. You could restrict it to public safety. You could restrict it.
we could
Business
establish one, we could
owners.
establish one, in
Yeah.
other words.
You could establish any type
Yeah,
of
I'll second it.
restricted zones.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I don't know, you need to add it though, because he's just explaining the restricted parking could include it.
Okay. He's just explaining what it was to me, what that was.
So JJ, are you saying that the employee parking and restricted parking would be the same?
Yeah,
It's the same.
employee parking, as as the ordinance is written right now, would be a subclass of restricted parking. That makes sense, Councilman. So within restricted parking, you could have various types of parking that's restricted to certain types of
I think the same could be
business
said for a
owners.
lot of that though, right? I mean, the same could be said for handicap, same could be said for parallel or loading zones, but we still identify those in there as specific established zones. And so I think honestly, I don't see how it hurts to include the language for employee parking, but
Damn question.
just my thought.
All right, do I have a second?
Second it.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
Second amendment, I'd like to amend section 82002 metered parking to extend the parking limit from 2 hours to 4 hours in parking lot, the library lot and the playground lot.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay. Big mistake.
The
No,
third,
two,
3-2.
3-2.
3-2.
3-2.
The library and the marina and the playground parking lot, 4 hours.
the third motion, I'd move to amend section 8-2005 subsection C to reflect city versus town.
Councilman Scaletti, you don't have to make a motion on that if you don't want to. It's a
Yeah.
scrivener's error
Okay.
that you have noted. sir.
Okay.
And that would count on the visitor center as well. For the
Yes, sir.
service error. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I retract my motion.
Okay. All right, now back to the original question. Second reading, all in favor of, got my thing here.
As amended.
Yeah, the motion as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 This is with changes, all right?
This is
All right. Okay. Lost my place here. I got it. Had so many changes, Josh, I can't find my,
I'm sorry.
sheet. But here somewhere.
You should be on page 330-ish.
No, I'm getting, well. No, I'm not talking on pages. I'm talking about my agenda.
Go right here in the new business.
Yeah, we've already approved it.
Road naming, right?
Yeah, here we go, road naming. Okay, this is under new business. Public hearing and first reading for an ordinance to rename Southside Loop and Southside Park as Clayton Cooler Loop. I'm going to open up the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak? Okay, hearing none, close it. All in favor of an ordinance amending,
You want to take a motion first?
yeah.
I move accept the change of the name of Southside Loop to being
Clayton Cooler Loop.
I second it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. I want to apologize. New business items A and B have one cover memo in your packet because we were going through that process together. So there's not a separate cover memo for the airport road project, which will be the next item.
Okay.
Back in January 14th of this year, we talked about renaming Southside Loop after Clayton Cooler, who served for 45 years as City of Beaufort's Public Works Director. Councilman Lipsitz made that proposal and had that item added to the Work session agenda. Oh, we settled on Clayton Cooler Loop with staff after looking at map, and looking through the 911 system. This matter went to the June 16th Planning Commission meeting. It also went to the May Planning Commission meeting, and we worked out some administrative matters. There, the commission unanimously recommended renaming Southside Loop as Clayton Cooler Loop without any reservation. City's legal authority to do this is in section 5-7-30 in the South Carolina Code to regulate public roads and naming of public roads. And in South Carolina Code 6-29-1200 requiring planning commission review for changes to officially mapped streets. Staff recommendation on this is that you proceed with first reading of renaming Southside Loop as Clayton Cooler Loop, recognizing Mr. Cooler's dedication and service to the community. And we would bring forth this ordinance again for second reading in our August meeting. Any questions about the renaming of Southside Loop and how we got here in the process?
Hearing none.
Voted on it, so probably.
Yeah, we already voted on it, yeah.
Yeah, good. All right.
Okay, public hearing in first reading on ordinance to rename the newly constructed airport road project as Donnie Beer Drive. I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak? Hearing none, I'm sorry, go ahead, Angel, I'm sorry.
I just noticed that Miss Donnie's name is misspelled here. I believe it's Donnie.
Yeah, it's
That's
right.
correct.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll get it right on the sign. Okay. All right, anyone else? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, now for first reading, an ordinance to name the newly constructed airport road project as Donnie Beer Drive. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Okay, next is a public hearing and first reading on an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Landscaping, Parking, and Lighting of the Beaufort Development Code. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Jesse's trying to.
Oh, Jesse, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see. I
Gotta move
saw
faster,
Warren get up,
Ronnie.
but he walked out the door.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're just too speedy, Mayor. Just very brief, again, this is another code section that was given a lot of consideration by the Planning Commission, many work sessions, in depth, talking through the code, the current code, and how to make it stronger, that in a way that's more protective of our trees, but also recognizing private property rights. And with the advice and expertise of the certified arborist, I feel confident that the draft is a much needed improvement for the city's tree ordinance. And I think to your question earlier, Councilman Scaletti, about the PTAC involvement, that was something that we were very eager to ensure that they were involved in the process. And my understanding is that the president was relaying the amendments back to her fellow board members, but it might be worthwhile to reach out and confirm, and especially if there's some new members, just to at least let them flag it for them that this is on the agenda, because sometimes people are not always monitoring agendas as actively as folks like me, who is looking at them on a weekly basis. So I think getting their kind of blessing would be nice. One point of disagreement that we had, we would love to see the city be as strong as the town of Port Royal in their tree protections. And that includes a higher mitigation fee for, the way that it's structured is to really try to prioritize and encourage preservation first. If that's not possible, then you can do replanting either on the site or on a city owned property. And then as a last resort, if none of those things are possible, pay a certain fee into a fund that the city can then use to replenish tree canopy throughout the city. The town of Port Royal, as I think you all know, adopted some of the strongest standards in the state, and we'd love to see the city match those requirements. And one thing that the town did more recently was to create kind of a tiered approach. So their redevelopment districts and residential lots of record are treated separately, and the fine is very minimal in order to not stifle those redevelopment opportunities and to be too onerous on single-family owners. So we would encourage the city to follow suit. But other than that, we are very supportive and understand either way if the city wants to take its own different approach. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, but do I have a motion to accept at first reading an ordinance amending chapter 5? What's that?
Officially close the public hearing.
I did. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. Public hearing is officially closed. Now I'm going to ask for a motion on an ordinance amending chapter 5, landscaping, parking, and lighting of the Beaufort Development Code.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do we need to have, Kurt, you want to come up and give everybody a quick overview?
I'll try. I know everybody doesn't find this as riveting as Josh does, so I'm just kidding, Josh. But I think as Jesse was stating, and I think previous speakers, this was kind of a long process too, even though it was just one chapter. And it involved a lot of people that gave their time. It involved, Coastal Conservation League, I think, attended every meeting and helped with some of the drafts. And we had Michael Murphy, who gave his time as an arborist. He gave a lot of free time. That was, we had Barb Ferrier as the chairman of PTAC, attended almost every meeting and gave a lot of her time. And I think was communicating to the then members of PTAC, but I'm not sure exactly as PTAC has gone. We had, private citizens, just a lot of other people kind of coming to these meetings and giving time. And as you can see with our planning commission, we have a lot of expertise. So, it took some time, but I think we're pretty confident with what we're proposing. We didn't receive any other comments on this, and I don't think there were any other comments of any issues with this chapter yet that we've received. So I'll just go forward with it. I'll try to go quick, but we talked about this at the code edit session last year, and this was really to address one of the key, I think, items that you hear complaints about and concerns from the public is really specimen and landmark trees, also parking, but especially the specimen and landmark trees. I think we all realize this is a very unique place that's just very beautiful, and keeping and preserving those trees and then yet still preserving the ability to develop and have good development are really the goal here. How do we do both? And how do we change our current code? Because I think all found that it was somewhat lacking in doing so. And so I think the big thing was taking a lot of this, changing a lot of the, providing definitions, taking some things out of an Appendix A and putting them into the code, having an arborist go over all of those things and with staff. So all that was done. I'll just kind of try to breeze through because I don't think anybody wants to listen to all the details here on this, but really clarifying tree permits and the requirements for tree permits. Wasn't the current code's just not super clear on that. And as Jesse was stating, I think we took your direction from last year, and we were trying to exempt out single family, 2 and 3 family lots from those, really high fees that you heard about in Port Royal, and exempting those lots out. So, if you or I, had a live oak that came down because of a hurricane or because wanted to build a garage and there was really no other place in the lot to do it, you wouldn't have to pay, tens of thousands of dollars. And so, or it was a safety concern. So, that is something that we did preserve on your direction, whereas actual cutting of trees and the mitigation costs for development, were dramatically increased. And that includes the strict pre-development standards. So, a deferral for unauthorized tree removal up to 5 years or 10% canopy loss. That somewhat mimics the Beaufort counties right now, but it changes it a bit. Designating some of the specimen and landmark trees and kind of updating that list with the priority area preservation. One of the big things we did was create a minimum canopy coverage. And so that's probably maybe the most controversial thing I think that this is requiring is that, you can't just clear cut a lot anymore. You have to provide a minimum of that existing tree canopy. But we also wanted to create some exemptions for that for development, which we did. Just kind of defining tree, I don't want to get into all this stuff, but just clarifying like tree buffer areas, perimeter buffers. Perimeter buffers were kind of a major thing. The current code is a little bit unclear on perimeter buffers. And a perimeter buffer is, I think if you've been to it, you can kind of see it on 170, but it's more clear, I think, if you drive down to Bluffton or Hilton Head, where there's those major kind of 50 to 75 to 100-foot strips of land that, have the native vegetation or improved landscaping, and then you see the development in the parking lot, et cetera. And so we really kind of clarified that table and expanded it based on, on both their codes and kind of just thinking about, what would be fair for development as well. Just really looking at some of the foundation beds and landscaping requirements for some of our districts. I think I talked about mitigation fees and replacement planning. So, right now, I think as we discussed, it's like a $10 fee for replacing a lot of trees. So we wanted to increase that, and the fee for cutting a specimen and landmark tree is somewhat minimal, so that was all increased. Now there's stringent permitting and penalties for cutting a tree. I think I already talked about the deferral, and so that's just a summary here. But I think I kind of mentioned all of that. So we did, when we're talking about the buffer requirements, I'm maybe going too fast for myself. We looked at all the major streets and kind of more secondary streets where we think development could occur. And there was a lot of concern about the form-based code. And so I should probably give a little more description on this, and a lot of concern from the Planning Commission and some private citizens on buildings up against the street. And with the perimeter buffer in the code that was already existing, it somewhat could address those issues. And so what we did is we expanded that with a few extra streets, and we looked at, what are the carrying capacities of all those streets. And so we got the maps up. We even looked at Google Maps for a few meetings, looking at all the access points, all of the setbacks on every single lot. And, we thought about, this 170 to 21, what is appropriate buffer? And we created types of those buffers based really on the Hilton Head and Bluffton requirements, kind of using them as a guide. And so what we're doing is we're trying to prevent a situation where a building on those major streets, not in the downtown area, not in, which has its own issues, which I don't need to get into, but on these major arterials that may need to be expanded in the future, and that they have a sufficient buffer, and that's a landscape buffer. So it kind of takes care of, I think, some of the concerns of the form-based code in a kind of an elegant fashion, where we're preserving kind of the idea of the form-based code, but we're taking away the negative externality, which is, a giant 5-story building with a 10-foot or 5-foot setback from a highway, which actually it's a 10-foot setback from a major highway, which maybe is not what I think we were intending when the code was adopted. So I think this is what's being proposed, is that will no longer ever be possible, essentially. So you'll always have a pretty good buffer setback for development. So, I think that's, and it's really well tested with Hilton Head and Bluffton. That's kind of what we're using as a guide. So I think, we have a pretty good idea here on that. The parking standards is really a cleanup of those. There was a lot of standards that I think we actually made a little more just easier to understand. We looked at all the uses. In some cases, they created maybe kind of a requirement that didn't make any sense. In some of the transect districts, we were essentially allowing almost very limited parking for things like hotels, whereas other uses, we didn't have enough parking for them. So those were all looked at. We were allowing, there's a very strict parking maximum, which can really affect a developer, all of your chain stores and big box, and not that we're getting big boxes, but even a grocery store or a smaller retailer have a parking, basically that they require before they'll come to your city. And we have some strict parking maximums that limit that. And so we were, trying to create some more discretion to allow for that parking maximum, not to discourage development and some of those entities coming into Beaufort. So that was kind of the idea on that. Lighting, we kind of left as it was. I think there was just one or two minor changes on that. But fencing, so fencing was previously in an encroachment section of chapter 2, which, we're kind of going to leave because it's about a lot of encroachment. So it didn't really make a lot of sense. There was really no fencing section in the code. And so where would you put fencing? In the landscaping chapter, I think was the most appropriate. That's where we felt that it would be the most appropriate place to do that. So we set some basic fencing standards for both transect and conventional districts in chapter 5.8. So that's a new standard that's at the end of this code. And so we put some standards that are consistent with what the HRB is doing with fencing in the preservation manual, which was like a 4-foot high fence and no opaque fences and limited front fencing. We're just kind of putting that in the code. But we're also setting the standards for, the suburban lot with a traditional like 6-foot fence, that kind of thing, in the code. So it's very clear. And then we're completely prohibiting electric fences. And actually, I had this from, it said only in an industrial zone. And I forgot to update this from the Planning Commission, but the Planning Commission felt that that it should just be prohibited in general in the city. So the code, the draft that you have before you completely prohibits electric fencing, which I'm looking at other codes and model zoning ordinances, they're either restricted to industrial zones or completely prohibited. So that would be consistent with the national kind of standard. So that's kind of hopefully a quick 10-minute overview on this. I can answer anything in detail, but again, it's refining the tree standards, which were unclear, creating a very clear tree permitting standards, increasing the mitigation and replacements costs, et cetera, providing an exemption for just regular people that have these specimen landmark trees. Let's see, creating a canopy standard so there can be no more clear cutting and pretty strict penalties if you do clear cut, including a deferral of your whole development for a number of years. And then cleaning up some of the parking standards, and then a whole new section on fencing, which we hope is pretty clear and predictive for everyone. So,
Okay, council have any comments or questions? Mitch?
I have a comment, a couple. I first want to thank you for all the work you poured into this, you, the Planning Commission, and anyone I didn't mention, especially when it comes to the preservation of tree canopies and the developments, because I think we've all been paying pretty heavily about the clear cutting and lack of tree canopy that was left after some of these developments. And also on the section 5.8 regarding fencing, to clarify that, especially when it relates to electrical fences above ground. There's just no reason at all to have an electrical fence in a neighborhood where children are running about playing. It's an opportunity for injury. So thank you very much.
Anyone else have?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, you said that for an individual, a family, to remove like pine trees, stuff like that, there's not going to be much of a cost for that?
Yeah, so if you look in, and I'll get to it here, if you look at the code, so there's like a cost per diameter inch of tree that's cut down, a mitigation fee, basically. And basically, we're exempting a single family or two-family, three-family lot of
Okay.
record from that requirement.
That was one of my big concerns,
So
so,
they would have to pay that fee at all.
okay.
Mike, you have anything? Josh?
I do. First, Kurt, I want to thank you. I think you, the Planning Commission, did an excellent job of balancing the passion to preserve and increase the mitigation cost, while at the same time balancing council's concern about the average resident not having to pay those high fees for removing a tree that may be a hazard, or if they have no other options. So I think you guys balanced that act very well, and I know that had to be challenging, so thank you for that. I do have a couple of things. One, this is more Scrivener's, but in your definitions, you define official as a member of city staff designated by the city manager. And so I think that it may be better as this chapter unfolds to identify that designee as official, since that's captured in the definition. And most of the time throughout this chapter, it's identified as the code administrator. So while it's a tiny thing, because it's identified and defined as official, it may be better to just identify that person who would be designated by the city manager as an official to be consistent throughout the chapter. That's one note.
Okay.
The other thing is Neil kind of touched on it, but I personally do not think that pine trees should be protected as a specimen or a landmark tree, even if they get to that size of 16 inches or 24 inches. They are a very dangerous tree, and lightning rods as they grow taller. So I'm not in favor of protecting those as specimen or landmark. I'm not sure where the rest of council falls on that, but just
Are you
wanted
referring to the all other pines? I think that was the addition. Just 20
longleaf pine and then all other pines. Yeah.
I think that was a longleaf pine is I think already in the code. It's kind of a pretty important tree for an arborist around here to establish. If you remember, I think you went to Nemours where they were trying to replant all of the longleaf pines because that used to be the native pine here. But I understand your concern with the all other pines, which 24 inches. I think that was a recommendation from Mr. Murphy, an arborist, and PTAC, so or the chairman.
Okay. Well, I mean, if they have knowledge that extends my very surface level concern, then if leaving it in there is what they feel is best, then so be it. But I had trouble looking at longleaf pine and all other pines being protected as specimen trees, and so
yeah, and I think we could have I think his explanation is that they create a lot of the canopy for the other trees, and
yeah.
I'd have to have Mr. Murphy kind of explain it, but he explained it to the planning commission a number of times and they accepted that. But if
Okay.
it's your prerogative if you don't want to keep that reference.
Fair enough. We could come back to that if anybody else wants to discuss it. On another note, so looking at your parking reductions. So right now, I don't know whatever, it seems like everybody else has a different package. I'm on page 411. And this is the red line version, and it's under section 5.3.2 tree coverage requirements under bullet 3, and it says parking reductions. So it starts by saying the appropriate approval body may authorize up to a 10% total parking reduction for development for the protection of any land, landmark, or specimen tree, or the tree protection zone of any such tree. Should the development protect over 30% of the existing tree canopy, a parking reduction of 20% on all standards may be authorized by the appropriate approval body. So if they're capped at authorizing a reduction at 10%, I'm not sure how they'd be able to apply a 20% parking reduction if over 30% of the canopy is preserved. So I think maybe that's a conflict. But just thinking about that over 30%, if I'm building a development, is that to say that if I preserve 31% of the tree canopy coverage, I can get a 20% reduction in parking?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I think, again, knowing that this could create, we don't want to be too stringent, right? We're kind of requiring a lot, right, with tree canopies. So we were trying to give some breaks to the developer to incentivize.
It's an
the tree-
incentive.
It's an incentive.
Right.
And so that's the goal. It's an incentive. It's not really a, I guess, requirement. It's an incentive to kind of help with preserving more trees to a developer. So kind of a give.
Yeah, no, and I totally, I get that. I get that. I think it's a contradiction to say that they may authorize up to 10% and then allow 20% in the next sentence. But maybe we could just clean that up a little bit and it be no issue.
Well, the one's an incentive. The other is actually just like a kind of a waiver because we have an administrative already in the code of 10% for many, many items that are like an administrative approval and waiver. So the planning commission wanted to add that. to the
Oh, I
parking
see.
requirement. Does that make sense?
Yes,
And
so
then
they
the
can do up
next-
to
the next
10%.
section- The next section is actually an
The
incentive.
incentive.
So if you
I
go
gotcha.
past that, then you can get the extra 20%. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. So it doesn't contradict. It's just saying that they have basically a 10%, they can reduce parking up to 10%. And then on another thought, if they preserve more than 30%, they can reduce parking by 20%.
That's right.
So it's okay, got it. I would still think that maybe it would be better to increase that incentive. So basically, if you preserve more than 35% or more than 40%, then you can reduce parking by 20%. I don't know that it does us much good if we incentivize and then, okay, you save one more tree and get to that 31% mark. And I know it seems petty, but I'm just saying, reading this, that could happen. And then you would reduce parking. I think the parking requirements, I don't have it pulled up here, but I think I remember seeing one parking requirement for every 3,400 square feet of restaurant space. So then if I get a reduction by 20%, that would mean that I could essentially have 6,800 square feet of restaurant space and only be required to have 1.6 parking spots.
Well, I don't think it's actually 1 per 300 for
300.
but yeah, I mean, I think.
No,
that's-
for retail, it was 1 per 300.
Well, again, it's an incentive and I think, if you go much further, then there's not enough parking. If so it's kind of one of those, it's just trying to give an extra incentive. But if we go too much more, then there's not enough parking, right? I think as you're saying,
Right.
so it's kind of, and again, the form-based code is already trying to reduce parking as it is. That's what we were talking about with parking maximum. So, this is kind of in that spirit of the code as it is now, as to try to kind of, think about reducing parking while I think in this case now we're trying to incentivize keeping.
Right. And I guess it will coincide with the open space requirement too, so we have that in place.
Yeah, and the open
Um,
space requirement, chapter 7, were changed as well, so.
One more thing, in your replacement mitigation chart, you have the mitigation fees which reflect, I thought we discussed 100 and 200. I see 250 and 350 being proposed here, which I'm not necessarily against. I know there's a lot of people that in the community that support a higher mitigation fee, but I would say that in the example, the second example, that number should probably reflect whatever our mitigation fee is. So it instead reflects 500 per inch. And I think that it should reflect 350 if that's the number that we're going with. So I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys. seen
there was
that.
a lot of comment on this and a lot of, I think, lobbying on this, to the planning commission. So that's what I think staff actually, that was our recommendation for pretty much the entire time, the 100 and 200, I believe. Planning commission went with a different number, but I think, this is a pretty minor thing. If you'd like it to direct us, you can.
I would,
Still about half, I think, of Port Royals. So that's pretty much how they came to it. And I think we also came to it because we were thinking of the cost to replace a tree. So that's how we got there. We actually contacted, some landscapers. How much would it cost to do the actual replacement for the mitigation? And when we got the diameter, the cost for the tree that would have to be replanted, that's how we came up with the number. So it actually was done in that manner. I know that's what you talked about, but we wanted to basically mimic what would be the cost to actually for a developer to replace the tree with the mitigation cost. So that's how it came about.
well, I would like to see that obviously come down, maybe 300 and 200, but I'm not going to die on that hill. Again, because I know that there's a lot of support for a higher mitigation in the community. But I will say that back to the examples, I do think that it's important that the examples reflect whatever mitigation cost we go to. And so that would mean that the second example needs to be corrected because right now it reflects a 30 inches times 500 an inch if the site cannot support the replacement, which comes out to a total of $15,000. And really that should be 30 inches times 350 in this chart. So again, just if we could just make sure we go back.
Yeah,
and
I think
straighten that
that
out.
was just, we can make that change.
But that was all that I had, man. It was mostly Scrivener stuff. And I appreciate you explaining the difference in that change of thought for the 10% versus 20%. That was helpful.
Okay, anybody else have comments?
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
On page 433, when we're talking about the retail, grocery store, restaurant and so forth on the parking space requirements, is that supposed to be 3,400 square feet? Gross square feet? Or is
No.
that a 4 lined out with a
That's
3?
That's a 4 lined out with a
That's
3.
what I thought. It's not 3,400, it's 300.
300.
Oh, well, okay. That's an honest mistake, right? We
Yeah,
can,
if it was
No, no, it is.
3,400, we
I'm
would.
with you. I'm looking at going, why the
I looked at
heck
it
would we
too.
do
You
that?
would not
that's
have
what I
any
was looking at.
parking.
I was doing it in my head and I'm like, man, that means you can have 6,800 square feet of restaurant
I
and
understand that,
1.6
yeah.
parking spaces.
No, yeah, there'd be like
Do it next
7,000 parking spaces. No,
Kurt, you're trying to trick me, man.
making sure. It's confusing. Thank you.
Councilman Scalati, I just got one comment about the pine trees. Yes, I was against pine trees being included, but seeing that they residential for, 1, 2, 3 families, whatever, that it's gonna be exempt. This would cause a, reduction of clear cutting by including them in there, because a lot of those lots are primarily pine trees.
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I'm gonna call a question. All in favor of an ordinance amending chapter 5 landscaping, parking and lighting of the Beaufort Development Code? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next on the agenda is a request from Morgan Powell to host a wedding and reception on Saturday, May 16th, 2026 in Whitehall Park. Waiver of drinking in public, waiver of drinking in a public park, and loud and unseemly noise ordinances from 4 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
So moved.
Okay, and a second. All right, Jennifer? Good
Good evening.
good evening.
So yes, we're very aware of Whitehall's sensitivity, and the wedding is during park hours of dawn to dusk. Other than that, it's a pretty standard request. Music will be played. We usually face those speakers to the marsh, not to disturb the group there. And we'll be working closely with the wedding party and the wedding planner regarding this to be.
Council, any questions, comments? All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Are you gonna be up for the next one too? All right, we have a request from the Exchange Club of Beaufort for co-sponsorship to host the 2025 Patriot Day and Award Ceremony at the Henry C. Chambers Waterfront Park on Thursday, September 11, 2025, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. to include a multi-agency vehicle procession from Whitehall Park over the Woods Bridge to the Waterfront Park.
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Bill, yeah.
go ahead, Jennifer.
Angel, are you here? I don't know if you're still.
Oh,
Oh, there
hey,
you are.
Angel, yeah.
So, we're asking, the reason why this is on here a little bit different, it's for the morning instead of the evening. Oh, it's in the evening?
Where's
Yeah,
it?
you got
Oh,
a,
it's supposed to be PM. Okay.
It's got AM on there.
It's got AM on
Got an
it.
AM on there, so sorry about that.
Winning about that.
But we are asking for multi-agencies to take that over the bridge. And according to, you've had meetings with them that they're amicable to this, to have a procession. So that's why we brought it up, because it's a little bit different than last year.
All right. Angel, you want to say anything? or-
Want to say anything?
Okay.
I know, thank you.
I-
I suppose, thank you for waiting so long for all this. It's just
Yeah.
a little different because of the multi-agency agreement.
I had a conversation with Angel this morning that I was concerned about whether there was any special requirements getting across the Woods Bridge, but she addressed those. I think I'm happy.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Passes.
I'll come back later.
Okay, next is an ordinance to adopt a nuisance abatement ordinance for the city of Beaufort. This is first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
JJ? Give a brief presentation for us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. We brought forward a real bare bones nuisance abatement ordinance at our last work session, and we provided some samples from other jurisdictions and told council we wanted to beef that up and make that as strong as we could. Moving forward, and again, the ordinance follows the state nuisance abatement code, but it allows us a quicker timeline for addressing some issues at the local level. Again, June 10th, we had the work session, and then today we're having first reading, and we propose to have second reading on August 19th of 2025. The proposed ordinance is in your packets on page 456. And it's been codified by the city attorney to match up with all of our other ordinances. This was a joint effort between the city manager's office, city attorney's office, the police department, and codes enforcement. And everybody at the staff level has been through this and feels comfortable enforcing all of the measures in here. And it has been cross-referenced with our other ordinance sections. Does council have any questions for first reading?
Just want to say thank you for your work on this. It's much needed ordinance, in my opinion, so.
Great.
Anyone else have a comment?
I'm good with it.
Very well done.
All right.
Good with
all
it.
in-
Thank you, JJ.
Yes, sir.
All in favor of the ordinance to adopt the nuisance abatement ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, next is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaufort adopting the City of Beaufort Strategic Plan for fiscal years 2026 to 2027.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. JJ?
All right, council, back in February of this year, we held our strategic planning retreat that was facilitated by Bill Strip of the Bridge Group LLC. We brought that document to you all in work session, and the document you have in your council packet as a draft is what would be published publicly. On a somewhat separate note, one of the things we've been talking about over the past year is the adoption of AI technology in city processes. I do want to note for council that this is one of the first projects that we've used some of the AI that we've been testing out. We have caught a few different little areas where, like with council's pictures, adjusted all of your orders. I caught that it had the mayor at the bottom, and I did not catch the order when we were correcting that. But that will be corrected to match up with the website. There was also a couple of small items with the key focus areas, one being one that Councilman Scaletti pointed out to us, that key focus area on page 475, 1.5, we had agreed would be completed in fiscal year 2026 as opposed to fiscal year 2027. I believe we've caught all of those minor issues, and we're going to give this, if it's approved by resolution tonight, we're going to give this another final run through with a third party, let them take a look at it, make sure we didn't miss anything, let staff give it another final run through before we correct any other scrivener's errors. But this would be the official document like our other strategic plans that would be available to the public.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for construction of the King Street and Port Republic stormwater projects, pending final approval by the South Carolina Rural Infrastructure Authority and the appropriate grant budget approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. JJ?
Council, Mr. Mayor, I am happy to report that we are one step closer to completing the King Street stormwater project. This has been a long path for all of us, from the original stormwater study that was completed in 2021 to the design process over the past 2 years. And it went out to bid this summer. We had to extend that several times because ARPA money has proliferated our projects. We took the pump station out of the scope. So there's approximately $9 million. You have the exact budget in your packet that we had set aside for this project. And our goal was to get the project in at a low enough amount that we could use any remaining money towards the Port Republic project, because we believe that the Charles Craven project, which is out for bid right now, is going to come back significantly higher than what its original estimate was. The bid that Davis and Floyd, our engineers, handled the bid process for us, utilizing our procurement as well as federal procurement rules. The bid that they recommended came from J.H. Ears Construction for $6.48 million, which is slightly higher than what we had anticipated. We anticipated around a $6 million, but again, it's on par with what we're seeing in actual bids for construction projects right now. So staff's recommendation is that we proceed with this. There is a Rural Infrastructure Authority approval process because this project is almost entirely grant funded. But we want to get ahead of that and go ahead and authorize the city manager to enter into the contract once we receive those final approvals from RIA. And then if we can proceed with the Port Republic project at this time using grant funding that doesn't require any sort of amendments, this resolution would allow the city manager to enter into that contract as well. But if we're not able to do that, we have to do a budget amendment, or if there's just no way to combine the two grants, the SCIP and RIA grants, then we would have a shovel-ready project that we would start applying for other grants for moving forward, and that would fall into our capital improvement planning process. Does council have any questions about the bid process and what our recommendation is here for this resolution?
Comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the construction of King Street and Port Republic stormwater projects, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, council.
All right, next is authorization to allow the city manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation's Kids in Parks program and the Friends of the Spanish Moss Trail. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Scott?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've asked Mr. Farrow to join me here at the podium in case you had any detailed questions, but this is the same item that we covered in a previous work session. And what I'm asking you to do is to consider a memorandum of understanding between the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation's Kids in Parks program, the City of Beaufort, and the Spanish Moss Trail. The city was approached by Friends of Spanish Moss Trail to enter into this agreement, and the agreement is to support the mission of the Kids in Parks program, which is to work together with partners throughout the country to promote children's health and the health of parks by increasing physical activity and engaging families in outdoor adventures that foster a meaningful connection to the cultural world. In your packet, you will see the responsibilities of the MOU, the responsibilities of the city under the MOU. And essentially, they include very little more than what we do now to maintain the trail, with the exception of constructing and installing a trail head kiosk and participating and supporting a grand opening celebration, which we would gladly participate in, I would hope. And so we're asking for your approval to enter into this memorandum of understanding. And if you have any questions, myself and/or Mr. Farrow will be glad to answer them.
Questions, comments? Okay. All in favor of authorizing the city manager to enter into the memorandum of understanding with the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation's Kids in Parks program and the Friends of Spanish Moss Trail, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. And then, next is the city attorney contract renewal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, in August of 2023, you appointed Ben Coppage to be your city attorney. Would you like, I'm sorry.
We need to have a
you need
motion.
So moved.
Second.
My apologies, Mayor and Council. You appointed Mr. Coppage in August of 2023 to be the city attorney. According to our ordinances, that is a two-year term, so his two-year term would be up this August through individual discussions with council and then discussions with our city attorney, Mr. Coppage. There is a mutual desire to extend that contract by 2 years, which is also allowed under our ordinance. And so what we have for your consideration tonight is a renewal of representation agreement for your consideration, which would again extend Mr. Coppage's contract for an additional 2 years.
Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor of the city attorney contract renewal, signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Next, we have the request from the Junior Service League of Beaufort to use the Henry C. Chambers Waterfront Park in co-sponsorship for the second annual Scales and Tails Kids Fishing Tournament on April 4th, 2026 from 8:30 to 3 p.m.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
So, in speaking with, the Service League about moving because of Waterfront Park, because this request was come in before the, engineers report, they are looking at Waterfest and how they're gonna move their tournament over to the marina. So we've been working with them on doing that, and they really want to keep it in Beaufort, and that is the plan to keep it there. So we are working with the group to make sure that, we can keep it here if as all as possible, the marina, or if Waterfront Park, if it does open up again.
Okay,
So we are working with them.
any comments or questions?
Because that could be enough room for all the people. Okay, great. I'm good.
Good, good.
Okay, any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the request from the Junior Service League of Beaufort to use the Henry C. Chambers Waterfront Park or other location for co-sponsorship of the second annual Scales and Tails Fishing, Children's Kids Fishing Tournament. All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
passes. All right, now, up next is public comment on non-agenda items. We have two individuals who've signed up. The first one is Mr. Anthony Pope. Pope, you can come up and speak. You got 5 minutes. Give us your name and your address, and we'll start the clock.
Anthony Pope, 2200 Lafayette Street.
I don't want to give my apartment number,
Fine.
but in short, on behalf of the urban community or the suburban mentality people who get stuck in urban communities, I'm a firm believer in, let's say, an experiment of life and its design. Most people, my personal opinion, most people know who they are or who they want to be by the time they're 5 or 6. Some scientists will agree with this. However, based on how we're treated or judged or represented through mass media, newspapers, et cetera, or historical events, we get treated as bad people, or we find ourselves combating ignorance with our intelligence. For example, I was a former employee at a Papa John's. The general manager carries a white privilege card. 16 years of my experience in the industry, I try to show him different examples of how true leadership works. And he tried to use the carrot and the stick process. It was, I hear you, but this is better. Do it my way, do it my way, do it my way. Literally tried to drill it into me. And some people don't like working in those conditions. I recently went to the Beaufort Housing Authority, asking what incentives or programs they had for single men, wrongfully accused fathers, intelligent men who, again, have to combat ignorance or selfishness or biasness. And they were like, it's full. I had to stand 10 toes down, as we call it, and let the lady know that wasn't my question. My question was, what programs do they have? Or my bad. She responded, our programs are full. And I was like, I didn't ask you that. I asked, what programs do you have? And she tried to deny me speaking to her supervisor due to the ability of telepathy. Most people won't publicly speak about it, but there's a program called Scientology. And there's even a book called Scientific Illiteracy, How It Threatens Our Future. Right. So when I repeated the question, she was like, you got to call us, because she assumed, she thought my phone was on 1% and I didn't have a way to charge it. So I called, she's like, you got to call and schedule a meeting. I called, another lady answered, right? After speaking with her, she was like, oh, we have to schedule a meeting, da, 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 da. I'm trying to be as short as possible in my 5 minutes. Sometimes my tonality may change based on the pain or aggravation or joy. And so after sitting there for 30 minutes to an hour, dealing with the pressures of maintaining my composure and speaking with my sophistication while trying to understand what words will correlate to another human being, I've realized that many people in the city of Beaufort and across the globe have issues with trying to relay a message and trying to represent themselves as a positive person when we are raised in households or environments or systems that haven't been necessarily in our favor. Like for me, I'm a high school dropout. When I got my GED, joined the military, and it wasn't because I couldn't do the work, it's because the teachers bored me, all right? So when I applied to jobs, it becomes hard for men like myself. And as city council members, I know this is a statement, not a question and back and forth. I would like to ask y'all or suggest that y'all actually pay attention to the community, the urban side of it, if that's what that HUD program is supposed to represent. Because when I used to be a street pharmacist, AKA drug dealer for some people, it wasn't because I wanted to say, oh, bump the system, let me sell drugs, get people high and have them OD. It was, we need the money for our homes. The doctors are overcharging our people. So it was more of a Good Samaritan act as opposed to a criminal offense. And through that experience, I've literally heard people. Like, I understood. And we often pray that people understand us. We often hope that they understand us. And over the next 6 months to a year, I will be encouraging more people to come up and address their concerns publicly instead of having people who aren't in our environments speak for us.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Rob Cahill. He's still here? Oh, there he is. I see a pickleball thing going.
There you go. Rob Cahill, 608 Water Street. I want to invest part of my 5 minutes, where's the gentleman, he leave? Just let what he said sink in. Because it's a very vulnerable statement to say 3.5 hours to 2.5, whatever. And that's not the Beaufort that I live in. It's a Beaufort that he lives in. So we're just like pause a moment just to let what he said sink in, please. I have two things real quick. One, I'm a frequent visitor of the Waterfront Park. Oh, so there we had a little pleasant conversation. So I've noticed these signs as everybody else has, you know. No trespassing, we'll prosecute you. Does anybody have a venture a guess how many signs are up there? 10, 20, 30, 40? No, there's more than 50. That's only about 25 too many, I think. Do we really need 50 signs? And they're right at eye height. I mean, I gotta think that there's some sanity around it. We don't need 50 signs. We can have fewer signs. Everybody that's not living in a cave knows that it's closed. And we're having a water festival coming up on Saturday. I would love somebody to kind of peel some of these back, maybe put them every third or fourth fence, not every other fence. So that's just a request. And yeah. Second, public restrooms. I'm not sure who owns, whose jurisdiction over the restrooms by the playground. Is that a
cities.
city? Okay, how many people know how often they're closed? I'm there Sunday night, lots of families, and families have little kids who need to, you know, do things. And it was 8 o'clock and they're closed. Now, as a parent and now a grandparent, that is not a good hair day. So I don't know, and there's no posting of hours or anything, so I would like someone to eventually look at that. I'm not sure who owns right now the Safe Harbor restrooms that are public, because there's no other public places there. And they're closed, they were closed too. I went over there and they were closed. So just, it's not the biggest issue you're gonna talk about, but at least at minimum, post the hours and have them open. It's a inconvenience beyond that when they're not open. So thank you for listening.
Well, Rob, before you go, Linda can probably tell you why we lock it up. It's certain 7 o'clock, is that when they? Dawn to dusk, yeah.
Dawn to dusk, and I agree with you. Talking about having
Dawn to dusk. I mean, the body works 24 hours a day. I've said my.
I know
piece.
there's a liability issue too for leaving it open all night.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, now we move to reports, the city manager report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, I'd like to begin this evening by apologizing to council and especially to Councilman Scaletti for a severe breach of decorum this evening. Mr. Freeze referred to him on 3 separate occasions by his nickname. That is absolutely unprofessional, and it will not be tolerated by any member of the city staff. That will not happen again. I want to issue a tremendous thank you to our teams in Public Works, Downtown Operations, Fire, Police, and the Capital Improvement Projects team. Upon receiving the engineering report recommending closure of the Waterfront Park Promenade, these departments responded immediately and collaboratively. Their ability to mobilize on-site, adjust plans in real time, and communicate effectively with both Water Festival leadership and the public turned a potentially disruptive situation into a well-managed adjustment. This is teamwork at its finest, swift, responsible, and united under pressure. Special thanks as well to Deputy City Manager JJ Sauvé and Public Information Officer Ashley Brandon. Their timely, accurate public messaging and coordination with local media helped ensure our community stayed well-informed and confident in the city's response. I want to congratulate Lee Sunderla this evening on her recent appointment as the Executive Director of the Historic Beaufort Foundation, and we look forward to working with Lisa and her staff as she moves forward in her new role. The Beaufort Water Search and Rescue Volunteer Organization is celebrating its 50th year of service. This dedicated group has responded to countless water-related emergencies across Beaufort County, including during events like Water Festival and our Dragon Boat Race. And I want to let all know that tomorrow night, the Beaufort Port Royal Fire Department will formally recognize them at the Port Royal Town Council meeting in honor of their 5 decades of volunteer service. I also want to make everyone aware, and please note that the joint meeting of City Council and the Town of Port Royal, which was originally scheduled for July 10th, has been canceled, and it will be rescheduled for a date to be announced. Any questions?
Council, any questions? Okay, thanks, Scott. For the mayor's report, just briefly, I attended a presentation by Dominion Energy on preparations for upcoming hurricane season. Also participated in a ribbon cutting for the South Atlantic Bank. Was the reviewing official, had the honor of being the reviewing official at the graduation of Echo Company at Paris Island towards the end of June. Also participated along with Scott and Mike McPhee for a Liberty Tree sapling ceremony where we received a scion, if you will, or a sapling that's from the original Liberty Tree that was in Annapolis, Maryland. And it was the last one remaining, so we've got one of those that Nate has taken very good care of for us. So we'll find a place to put that when it gets a little bit bigger. And lastly, I want to thank everyone for the outpouring of support and thoughts and prayers for my wife following her serious injury that she suffered back on June 23rd. It's greatly appreciated, and I will tell you, she's doing pretty good. And we hope for a speedy recovery, but it's going to be 2 to 3 months that she won't be able to walk. And so I'm going to be her primary caregiver and chauffeur and ring the bell and I run, type guy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Mitchell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Been kind of a slow month for me, primarily because I've been convalescing from a back injury. So I just want to thank everyone for their well wishes. It kind of a little different for me, and hearing from friends and everyone it's just uplifting. So just want to thank you for that. Only participated in one meeting this month last month, back on the 26th, and that was just a planning meeting for the first South Carolina Volunteer Park. So thank you very much.
Councilman McPhee?
I have attended a number of ribbon cuttings and other functions that I think the mayor's mentioned and several others have mentioned that we attended. We did have a NERPIC meeting several weeks ago that actually presented the Northern Regional Plan for the transit study. And that's moving forward towards continued funding, and conversations about additional funding as will be needed, but a good meeting and good information from Brian Sullivan.
Okay, Councilman Scaletti?
Yes, I don't have too much to report this month. Unfortunately, I've been slowly recovering from a pretty traumatic injury myself. I was injured on the 22nd of June, and the recovery is not as fast as I would have hoped. But I do appreciate not just the support from the city and from my colleagues on council that have stepped up and helped fill in when I couldn't be available, but also just to the members in the community. And we didn't have to worry about dinner for the first 14 days. There was a meal delivered to our house at 5 o'clock, a home cooked meal every night, and just that level of support shown from members in the community means a lot. So I'm greatly appreciative and thankful for that. At first, I was transported to Beaufort Memorial, and I can't say enough good about the staff there and Dr. Baxley specifically, who is not the same as the CEO, who I also think a lot of. Both I feel are very great, intelligent men who are good in their respective roles. But in this particular case, Dr. Baxley and his staff were really good for me, so thankful for that. We did have a waterfront advisory committee meeting and thankful to staff for the opportunity to participate in these meetings via Zoom. It's not as easy as being there in person. And it creates different set of challenges, but it also still allows me to be involved in the conversation to a degree. And I'm thankful for that. Look forward to the Water Festival. Won't be able to participate this year in person. But they have had to, as well as the city, navigate some last minute hurdles in regards to the study. And I feel like they've done an awesome job working with our staff to ensure that we could still have the festival downtown. And I hope that they have a great year. So that's all that I have.
And last but not least, Councilman Lipsitz.
Yes, not a whole lot to say. First of all, prayers to you, Josh, Councilman Scalati, Councilman Mitchell, and to the Mrs. Mayor on healing. Hopefully get better, but one thing, Councilman Mitchell, you carry around agendas like this, it could throw your back out easily. You got to watch out. This is our agenda for tonight. Anyway, for me, attended a lot of ribbon cuttings. I'm not going to go into that. Last Thursday at Low Country Council of Government, I was honored to be elected to their executive board as secretary. Next year, I'll be treasurer, following year, vice president, following year, president. Very honored to have been elected. With that, I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Title 30, Chapter 4, Section 70A2 of the South Carolina Code of Law, discussions regarding conveyance of property.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Go into executive session. Thank you.